And good evening and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Also again on YouTube, youtube.com, and search the 98.9 WXCO channel. I am Chad Holmes, joined again by former Wausau West High School head football coach Jason Foster. Coming up, we will recap week 5 of the high school football season, look ahead to week number 6, and our special guest. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be talking to Vince Dinkel, the head football coach of the Marathon Red Raiders. They earned their second win of the season, a 40-0 win last week at Colby. So we'll talk to Coach Dinkel about his first season as the head coach at his alma mater and talk about the rest of their CWC large season. And then coming up at 7:06, it's our student athlete guest for this week, and a young man, a senior from Athens High School, Evan Purcell. He's had a terrific season, both rushing the football and on defense, leading rusher, leading tackler, as Athens, after a bit of a tough season a year ago, is 4-1 so far this year as well. So that's our lineup for tonight on the Big High School Sports Show. Good evening to you, Jason Foster.
Good to be here.
Good to be seen and good to be here on a beautiful Wednesday evening. Should have done the show outside, but we'll do it here indoors. And let's jump right in, because we are now just past the midway point of the high school football regular season. May not feel like it outside, but we are there right now. And let's start with the Wisconsin Valley Conference, as we tend to do. This week, we'll start with the first place team, the DC Everest Evergreens. Everest is now 3-0 in the conference, 3-2 overall after beating Marshfield at Steam Stadium last Friday night, 37-15. Marshfield now 1-4, 1-1 in the conference. Corbin Enzenroth, a third consecutive big night rushing, at least 150 yards, 3 straight weeks. He had 30 rushes, 157 yards, and 2 scores for DCE. Sophomore quarterback Ty Rohde was 7 of 15, 105 yards, 3 touchdowns. Xavier Edwards, again, he has not had the number of catches maybe expected, but he's still very, very dangerous. He had just 2 catches, but they were both touchdown catches, total of 65 yards. Hayden Carlson continues to run the ball well for Marshfield. He had 12 rushes, 137 yards, and a score. Ethan Femmel, one of the 2 quarterbacks that continue to play for Marshfield, was 6 of 7, 61 yards. But remember when we were talking about Everest and that rough night against River Falls, and they were 0-2? They've turned it around pretty nicely last 3 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, I would say, if Coach were here, he'd be telling us that it all probably starts at the line of scrimmage. And I think, having seen Everest a couple of times, that's where their strength lies in that team. They're good up front. Yeah. Once you're good up front, you can do some things on both sides of the ball. When you're able to run the ball, especially with the injury at quarterback and playing a younger guy there, that ability to run the ball and to rush it 30 times. I mean, it's not usually when we get these big numbers and these consistent numbers from these high school running backs, they're popping off big runs and have those 10-yard averages. So 30 carries, 150 yards, that's tough work. And lines opening good holes, and Marshfield plays good defense. So a nice balance there. Looks like with only the 15 attempts, they're still kind of figuring out what they have at quarterback right now, but you hit it on the head when you have an athlete like Xavier Edwards. He doesn't have to catch a lot of balls to have a big impact on a game. So, and again, it looks like their defense had a nice week again as well, holding a team like Marshfield to 15 points. That's good. They appear to be gaining some momentum.
And I'm curious to see if they get to a point, because they haven't had the situation yet to play from behind, to see whether or not the quarterback position does become a bigger factor. Because as you said, right now they got the running game going well, got the defense going well, and they've also been ahead in these games. I'm curious to see it. And Everest's goal would be, hey, we don't want to see that for a while because we're always ahead and running the ball and doing defense. But I'm curious to see if when Rohde gets into that situation, what the Evergreens may have.
Yeah, and I think probably as time goes on, this was his second start, and as he goes through the season, probably what they do in practice changes a little bit each week. They have a little bit more in their toolbox when they come to the game on Friday night. So I would bet if push came to shove, he would probably get those more attempts. It'll be interesting to see how he does, but thus far he's been efficient and done what they've needed him to do.
Wausau West and Wisconsin Rapids. We were at Tom Field last week for that one game we had right here on WXCO, and West held off Rapids 14-12. 3-2 now for the Warriors, 2-1 in the WVC. Rapids still looking for that first win, 0-5 and 0-3. Miles Waldvogel, 17 rushes, 77 yards and a touchdown. Shea Jones, 3 catches, 53 yards and a touchdown. Joe Gravine, 11 of 16, 123 yards and a score. Sawyer Brooks had a nice night running the football for Wisconsin Rapids, 19 rushes, 95 yards, and a touchdown. Owen Richardson, 19 of 38, 191 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Rapids scored twice in the fourth quarter. They scored with 13 seconds to go, needed a 2-point conversion to tie, could not do it. They did recover an onside kick, but really did not have enough time and enough arm strength in the rain to get downfield. So I would say for Wausau West, bottom line is you got the W. You're 2-1 in the conference. That's where you want to be right now. Wisconsin Rapids, they played much better football. And actually, I was impressed with what we saw with Wisconsin Rapids. They able to run the football a little bit. I thought their quarterback handled himself pretty well. A couple of picks, but still. And for Wisconsin Rapids defensively, I thought they were pretty solid after having some rough goes of it. So for Coach Mike Krenz, a step forward. But starting with West, may not have been pretty, but you got the W, and that was the big factor.
Oh, I think that's huge, right? I think they did enough, I think is the best way to describe last Friday night. Obviously, both teams played in it. The second half conditions got a little wild with all that rain, but I think everybody kind of experienced that in this area last Friday night. But they did enough. I think defensively in the first half is what kept them in the game. I think what took us a minute to get took the Warriors a little bit to get some things going offensively. But if you kind of look at the stat lines, right, this is kind of who and what they are and what they've been. Like they're still working hard to establish that run and having some success, but not a ton. Shea Jones is still a really nice target for us and finds a way to get open and usually finds the end zone once a game. Joe Gravine continues to be efficient. And then, like you said, Coach Krenz, I mean, he has to walk out of that. You're never happy coming out with a loss, but I would imagine there's a lot of talk in that program about establishing their culture, trying to see what their identity is, what the senior leadership is going to look like. And I would have to say they walked out of that game, in addition to being very wet, thinking that they did some things really well. I thought they showed a ton of character on both sides of the football. As a head coach, I'm always looking for, did we compete? And I think Coach Krenz can definitely walk in that end zone after the game and talk about how those kids competed right up to the final whistle and realistically gave themselves a chance to win the football game right up until the final play.
Hudson went to Gerke Field and for the second straight year defeats Stevens Point, this time around 24-14. So Hudson stays perfect. They're 5-0. They're 2-0 in the Big Rivers. Stevens Point now 4-1. They're still undefeated in the conference, 2-0. Cooper Adair, 6 of 11, 140 yards throwing, 23 rushes, 93 yards, and a touchdown rushing. Peyton Pingle, 61 yards rushing and 2 scores, 4 catches, 64 yards as well. Not a great night for Stevens Point offensively. They had a bit of a tougher time. Trent Breitbach was 14 of 29, 169 yards and a score. Johnny Ananitis had 3 catches, 64 yards and a touchdown. Did not run the ball very well, Stevens Point, on Friday night. And we thought we were going to find out a little bit, and there's probably still now some questions about Stevens Point. They're still in very good shape, both overall and in the conference. But I have to say that Hudson is starting to reestablish themselves as well, because after what happened against DC Everest last year in the playoffs, maybe there were some question marks. But boy, they've done the job so far this year.
Yeah, I see this score after having watching Hudson play a few weeks ago against West, and say what stands out to me through 2 games of knowing what them is their defense. Like, it sounds like we know what kind of number Spash has been putting up against, let's be honest, lesser teams to this point, but it looks like Hudson came in here and played really good defense. I can honestly say I was a little surprised by this score. I didn't think Hudson was a dominant or great team when we watched them play Wausau West and beat them. And I did expect Spash's offense to do a little more. So I think Everest comes out of this game. Obviously they have it on film too. Probably they had a nice win against Marshfield, gaining some confidence. So I think this kind of just starts to build up that rivalry game or game for the conference championship at this point, until something else changes. I think it makes it a little more intriguing, and will be interesting to see the matchups this week.
And then Eau Claire North and Eau Claire Memorial, the game that ended inches from the goal line. Eau Claire North held on, defeated Memorial 24-21. Memorial made a great comeback. They were trailing 24-15 after scoring. Eau Claire North led 24-15 after scoring with about 4 minutes left, but then Eau Claire Memorial scored to pull to within 3, recovered an onside kick, and stopped. I was told, I did not see this, but somebody was watching the game, that the officials had to take a long look into the pile, inches away from the goal line, and Eau Claire North did not get the call, and they were not thrilled about it. And North able to hold on and earn the W. And all of a sudden, Eau Claire North is now 2-3 overall, 1-1 in conference, but they're 2-1 in games that go towards the playoffs. And all of a sudden, they're putting themselves in a position perhaps to make the playoffs. And Memorial 0-5, 0-3.
Yeah, I think this game is kind of probably exactly what both teams in that community thought it was going to be. I think there was a really evenly matched game. I think that it's a big rivalry game. It was close, came down to the last one. Sounds like the officials got to play a role in it at the end. And I just keep thinking that Memorial's just right there, like ready to get over the hump. I think they've improved, in particular overall as a team, and their outcomes and the scores and stuff this year. They look like they're doing good things and competing, right? Like I think that was the next step for that program. Obviously, coach probably thinks they should have a couple W's at this point, but probably also makes them a dangerous team down the stretch. They're right there. They're looking for that signature win or that breakthrough win. So going to be a tough matchup moving forward. And Eau Claire North, good win for them. Yeah, I mean, like you said, puts them in a position to be in the conversation and potentially get that postseason bid, which would be a huge shot in the arm for that program as well.
They've won 2 in a row, and they haven't done that very often over the last number of years.
Correct.
So got to feel pretty darn good for the Huskies. Great Northern Conference, Mosinee now 3-2 overall, 2-1 in the conference after beating Wausau East last Thursday, 35-7, a game that was heard right here on 98.9 WXCO. Lumberjacks are now 1-4, 0-3 in the league. Treve Stoffel again filled the stat sheet with 17 rushes, 143 yards and a touchdown. 7 of 16 passing, 92 yards, but 3 touchdowns, 6.5 tackles, 1 interception. Ian Stahl, 16 rushes, 80 yards, and a score for Wausau East. Xander Klein, 11 of 21, 92 yards, but 3 picks in that game. It was a methodical win for Mosinee, I thought. East came out in the first quarter, a 15-yard touchdown drive, led 7-0, but after that, it wasn't a case where, with the exception of a pick 6, where it was lightning strikes, which we saw a little bit of last Thursday night, led to a more than almost a hour 40-minute delay. But they just wore down East up front, especially. It does as the game went on. East had no answers to really slow them down.
Yeah, and that's what we've kind of talked about a little bit. Having personally not seen East play this year, but in the games you've watched and then looking at the stats each week, it looks like that's where their struggles kind of begin and end, is at that line of scrimmage. And sounds like they have some athletes, so when they get the time or they have the hole, like their offense is kind of based in those big plays. And I think obviously we know Mosinee's really well coached and have some really nice athletes on that side of the ball. So if they're able to get pressure on the quarterback, able to play good on the back end, you get 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions like that, and that makes a big difference for your opponent on offense as well. And it sounds like Treve Stoffel was his normal wrecking ball self on both sides in this game.
Also Thursday, Medford, a big win, 20-18 over previously undefeated Lakeland. So Medford now 2-3, but 2-1 in the conference. Lakeland 4-1 overall, 2-1 in the conference. Will Wojcik, 19 rushes, 124 yards and a touchdown. A catch for 22 yards and a touchdown for Medford. Luke Kapatoskis had 10 tackles. I'm gonna have to get used to that name. I'm doing the game on Friday over at Tom Field, and Medford comes in. So, but Medford had 3 touchdowns. Lakeland had 3 touchdowns, but Medford got one of their 2-point conversions, and all of a sudden, Medford right back in the mix in the GNC.
Yeah, I think this was kind of the game we were looking at to see who kind of steps up and kind of separates himself. Obviously, Medford's not separating themselves, but if you look down, the rest of them we're going to talk about too. I mean, there's 4 2-1 teams in this conference. I mean, talk about something that's completely up in the air. And the one thing that isn't up in the air is Tomahawk, right? They're the ones that are undefeated and kind of sitting at the top looking down at everybody else. But sounds like a great game. Sounds like Lakeland competed like crazy. And Medford's right there. I mean, they're not going anywhere. Maybe not their dominant self, but I think everybody who's competing right now, right? Mosinee, Medford, Lakeland, Rhinelander, Merrill, all of these teams sit there at 2-1, and whoever gets to Tomahawk and knocks them off, I think everyone. I mean, this might end up being a 5-way tie for first place in this league.
Merrill now 3-2 overall, 2-1 in the conference. Win the War on 64 over Antigo, 35-0. Robbins 1-4, 0-3. Cole Rudai had 16 rushes, 138 yards, and 3 touchdowns for Merrill. Mason Block, 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. We had Coach Wadzinski on last week, and he's got to be feeling pretty good now, 3-2, and 2-1 in the conference. Good shape.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of their season didn't start the way they had hoped with those two tough non-conference game to start the year. But I think, like you said, he's got to be happy where he's at. Another good win for them. That kind of stacks together three good weeks in a row with two good wins, and liking the way their schedule lines up the rest of the season. Again, Anago appears to struggle to be offensively move the ball and scoring points. So a tough road for them.
Tomahawk, the surprise is the score. 49-7 over Rhinelander. Again, that was played in Rhinelander. Tomahawk stays perfect, 5-0, 3-0 in the conference. Rhinelander 2-3, 1-2 in the league. Cash Olson, 143 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 68 yards rushing, 2 scores. Tegan Sarazen, 5 rushes, 131 yards. Jet Riley, 2 catches, 75 yards in the score. Rex Riley, 10.5 tackles and a sack. Only points for Rhinelander came on a defensive touchdown. Tomahawk every week proving they're for real.
Yeah, proving they're for real and doing it convincingly. They've won close games. They've had blowout games. I think they even had maybe I'm thinking this wrong. I thought they even had an overtime game
against Whitburn.
Yeah, early on. So they found a lot of different ways to win. And obviously it looks like they're continuing to grow that as it goes on. Like you said, the week before, Rhinelander scored 28 points, had a great win against Wausau East. And then they roll into town, they get held to 7 and give up 49. So yeah, I don't know what that speaks, or it's kind of hard to get a gauge on who's who and what's what, but the matchups are kind of exciting each week in the GNC.
CWC Large in the Battle of Unbeatens last week. Amherst beat Loyal Greenwood 34-12, 5-0 for Amherst, 3-0 in the conference, 4-1 for Loyal Greenwood, 2-1 in the conference. Don't have numbers on it, but another big win. Amherst has not been threatened in 5 games. They have just come in, and we talked a little bit going into that Loyal High School field. It's a baseball diamond. It's got some dirt out there. It's really I've done games there. It's a little bit of an odd feel over there, but they went in there and they just took care of business. And right now, and of course, Amherst, their biggest game still to come, but boy, they have just been very impressive so far, scoring a lot of points every week.
Yeah, I think we've kind of talked a little bit about with maybe some hesitancy really early in the season. Like, is Amherst back, and are they kind of ready to be back at the conference? And I think this week, and they do have big games left, but week by week, they seem to be more and more convincing that they are back, or they are sitting there, and it'll be interesting to see in the big games how things stack up, and then what it looks like in their playoff run. And again, side note to this one, Loyal Greenwood, right? Like a team that nobody probably even talked about or thought anything about, 34-12. I mean, it sounds I don't know. We don't have stats and didn't see it. I think I remember seeing some highlights on TV. It looks like they competed, like they had some plays, and I think they might even cost a couple turnovers in that one. But obviously Amherst wins that one coming away and feeling really good about where they're at.
Stratford starting to build block by block. It looks like they're again working their way in the conference and obviously trying to make a run in the postseason, as Stratford now has won 3 in a row. They defeat Wyowega Fremont on the road 43-14. So Stratford 3-2 overall, but 3-0 in the CWC Large. Wyowega Fremont 3-2, but 1-2 in the conference. Aaron Knetter had 11 rushes, 102 yards, and 2 scores for Stratford. Brady Berg did not throw a lot, but he was very efficient. 4 of 4, 129 yards, 3 touchdowns. Xander Whistling had 3 catches, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns. For Wyowega, Carter Bertishaw had 11 rushes, 174 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and was 12 of 22 passing for 68 yards. But we've talked about Stratford. Their defense has been still pretty solid so far this season. Now it looks like the offense is starting to pick up a little steam.
Yeah, I think their ability to run the ball, that's obviously a really nice night for them. Efficient in throwing the ball, probably some good looking play action looks for them with that amount of passing and that amount of yardage. But I think this is it. I think Stratford is starting to stack the wins, but realistically, we talk every year about their ability to stack the wins and lesser teams in this conference. So we're still kind of waiting to see the next big matchup they have, who they are.
They won on the road at Wittenberg.
Yeah,
That
is a good point.
But then again, Wittenberg this week, they lost at Spencer Columbus 27-8. Spencer Columbus is the first conference win. They're 1-2, now 2-3. Overall, Whitburn now 2-3, 1-2, putting themselves in a little bit of a box here as we get towards the second half of the season. Jack Haper, 29 rushes, 169 yards, 3 touchdowns for Spencer Columbus. It was a 20-0 Spencer Columbus second half after a 1-point Whitburn lead at halftime. 70-yard touchdown pass from Bob Davis to Caden Yeager, the only score for the Chargers. So we've seen some of this from Spencer Columbus this year. They've been more competitive than they were a season ago, and it came together for a big W.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've been they have their wins, 2 now. But they've kind of, the other games that had traditionally been big blowouts for them, they've been in those games when some of them even close. So I would say this probably is a contender for kind of surprise of the week. Wittenberg being where they're at, probably surprise of the week as well. So they have some work to do going down the stretch.
When I saw the score, I thought it was wrong.
Yeah.
I actually went and I dug because I thought that's not right. It must be Wittenberg won 27-8. So no, that was definitely a surprise. And then Marathon went to Colby, played a late afternoon game on Friday. They moved it up, and Marathon able to knock off Colby 40-0. So the Raiders now 2-3 overall, 1-2 in the conference. Colby 1-4, 0-3. Truthers, a big night, 30 yards per completion. That's always a good way to start. 7 of 9, 212 yards, 3 touchdowns, added 9 rushes, 52 yards, and 2 more scores. Garrett Bracewell, terrific athlete, very, very dangerous. 3 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown. Swain Stencil, 10 tackles. And we'll get a chance to talk to Coach Vince Dinkel here in a couple of minutes. But Marathon, they started off with a 33-0 win over Pittsville, had a couple of really tough losses, games that could have gone either way against Auburndale that went to the last play, and also against Loyal Greenwood, who's obviously off to a good start. So this Marathon team, I think, generally has been, like I say, Spencer Columbus, much more competitive this year.
Yeah, I think obviously, like you said, we'll talk to Coach about it, but I love hearing about what's changed, what's different, right? What is the mindset? What's the attitude? What's the mental toughness these guys are bringing? And one of my favorite parts of getting these stat sheets each week, excuse me, is looking at Truthers numbers. I mean, Truthers, Treve Stoffel, as we go through these big players for these, and what a special young man he is, athletically and talented. And so looks like another fantastic night for him. And when you see his success and pairing it with Garrett Bracewell and the type of athlete he is, so I think it's athletes like that in a new system, I think it definitely gives you the opportunity to win week in and week out.
Merriwood CWC, Edgar over Pittsville, a game that was postponed Friday, played on Saturday, 40-0. So Edgar 5-0, 3-0, Pittsville 1-4, 1-2. Tucker Strite 6 of 11, 113 yards and a touchdown, 10 tackles, an interception. Landon Lukasko 4 rushes, 111 yards, a 29-yard touchdown reception as well. Dalton Dar for Pittsville had 19 rushes, 72 yards. Edgar, of course, they played early against Stratford, have not really been challenged in state games. They had that game against the team from Illinois that was a last-second field goal, defensive struggle. But one thing that jumps out, even in that game, Edgar's playing defense. Yeah,
I was going to say Coach Sins was happy again. They pitched another shutout. But yeah, I think that's who and what they are. They're kind of their signature. I don't know who slows them down in conference play this year, and so it'll be interesting with them bumping up and playing in that Division 6 this year, what the playoff run looks like for them.
4 wins in a row for Abbotsford. Falcons win at Assumption 36-6. Abby now 4-1, 3-0 in the conference. Assumption 2-3, 2-1 in the conference. Chase Boulder 7 rushes, 113 yards, 3 touchdowns. 41 rushes, 294 yards, 4 touchdowns as a team, which is actually a little low for Abbotsford sometimes when they win. Camden Martin for Wisconsin Rapids Assumption had 4 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown, but Assumption could not run against Abbotsford. Had 64 yards on 24 rushes, 2.5 yards average as a team. So when you look at it, when you run big and you stop the run big, that's a great start. Good foundation to win football games.
Yeah, I would imagine Coach Nat Miller was very happy with that effort. And like you said, what are the 2 key components? You play well up front, which allows you to stop the run and run the football. And looks like they did that last week and kind of still rolling with their run game.
Pacelli got their first conference win, 27-20 at Iola Scandinavia. 2-3 for Pacelli, 1-2 in the conference. Iola is struggling with injury this year, 1-4 and 0-3. Bryce Flaker had a big night for Pacelli, 27 rushes, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 reception, 60 yards and a touchdown. It's got to be frustrating for a team like Iola. It's been traditionally a pretty good program to fight through injuries, have some of your best players, and now last 2 weeks they lost in overtime against Assumption and lose a 1-score game, and you think, man, if we just had that
Yep.
little bit of extra, that's got to be frustrating, especially for the coaches who see these kids who are standing on the sidelines wanting to be out there, and you're just so close.
Yeah, absolutely frustrating for those programs. But if we look at the CWC large and small, and we look at the teams we're talking about this year, who in years past have kind of been for sure in that bottom 3 or 4, and these other teams like Iola, Pittsville, some of these other ones that we kind of felt were on the cusp of taking that next step and getting there, and it's kind of the roles have been reversed a little bit this year.
And finally, feel bad for Bark River Harris. They made the trip. I saw on the highlights on Friday night. They were waiting. They never got to play. They made the long trip from the UP, and they had their game against Auburndale canceled.
Yeah, that is tough. That is tough. You get 9, and when you lose one of them like that, you lose it due to forfeit in the first place, and you find a replacement. So, yeah, real tough luck for them.
We're going to take a 1-minute break and then come back and welcome our first guest for tonight, the head football coach of Marathon High School. We'll talk to Vince Dinkel coming up next here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO.
What's your idea of fall fun? Maybe it's hitting the trails on a new ATV. Then it's time to call CCU. That's Clover Belt Credit Union. Or if you're thinking of a UTV for hauling wood or hunting, or maybe just because it would make the tasks around your property so much easier, it's time to call CCU. ATVs, UTVs, utility tractors, and their attachments for care of your property. Whether you need it for fun or to get the job done, Clover Belt Credit Union is here to help with the great rate financing you want. What are you waiting for? Life's too short and winter's too long. Thinking about a motorhome or maybe a snowplow for your ATV or utility tractor? Call CCU for great rate financing. And if you're thinking motorcycle, Clover Belt Credit Union has the financing you need for the bike you want. Call or apply online at ccuwausau.com. Check it out. For vehicle loans, for mortgages, for financing fall fun, call Clover Belt Credit Union. That's CCU. Local lenders lending local money, keeping our community strong.
And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. With former Wausau West High School head football coach Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes, and it's time now for our coach guest for this week. And we are very happy to welcome into studio the first-year head football coach at Marathon High School, Vince Dinkel. Coach, thanks for making the short trek over from Marathon tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, the first year, and you know Marathon exceptionally well, obviously, because of going to school there and being so successful in athletics. As you took over this position, what was the first thing that you wanted to establish in this football program?
You know, I wanted to really get people excited about football and Marathon again. You know, it's got a great tradition of sports.
Yeah.
And you know, I want kids to be excited. I want parents to be excited. I want, you know, a lot of enthusiasm and you know, positive spirit around the sport of football. And you know, so far and people that I've talked to, I think doing a pretty good job of getting people excited again about football and Marathon. And I'm very, very happy with the progress we're making there.
Yeah, and I think I'm hearing the same thing. I think there's a lot of people excited, and I think you hit it on the head. And kind of where I was going to go with my question is Marathon is a very proud sports town, right? You take people from Marathon, and I love all the rivalries with the people down the road over the years and all the different sports. So what that was your goal? What have you done to achieve it? Like, when were you hired? What was
It was around March.
Okay. So what when you started in March, what did the spring and summer look like before you got to camp? What were some of the first things you did?
Well, first of all, establishing, you know, my face so parents know who I am, because I don't work for the school at all. So I've been an assistant coach for the past couple of years, but stayed kind of behind the scenes. So, you know, getting my face out there, letting people get to know me a little bit, and then, you know, telling them I'm here for communication. I'm here to help your kids achieve what they want to achieve, and I'm here to foster excitement about football. So
awesome.
Has anything surprised you? Because jumping into the role as the head coach, and I know in talking to coaches, it's often not the things on the field that cause maybe the biggest headaches. It's the dealing with all the other issues. Has anything surprised you in your first go around here as the head football coach?
No. We've got a lot of great kids on the team. So there hasn't been any, oh, my kid should be playing more, my kid should be doing this. And I have not had to deal with any of that so far. And it's been awesome. But, shout out to the marathon community because it's filled with a lot of great people. It's been very easy, I think. And shout out to our senior class too. It's filled with a lot of great leaders, great competitors too. They want what's best for themselves and they want to succeed and achieve. And, they set a great example for the rest of the kids too.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about them. Give us some names. Tell us who the leaders are. Obviously we talk about guys like Truthers on here every single week with the incredible things he does and all the different sports he plays as well. But so talk about True, but talk about who are the other guys, maybe the ones we don't hear quite as much about or have fill up the stat sheets, but have made a big impact in the program.
Yeah. True is an exemplified leader. He's everything you'd want in a leader. He's great to have on the team, but Cassius Ninnebuck is another guy who's, maybe not as outspoken, and he plays on the offense and defensive line, so doesn't get that shine, but he's the same way. He's a great leader, a great influence for everybody. Another guy is Drew Wolfel. He's another guy who's had success in multiple sports and didn't play at all last year because of an injury. And so it's been great having him back, being involved, and he's really helped the team this year. Landon Snyder is another guy. Landon is a little bit of a bulldog mentality. He's a little bit undersized. He's short, but he's strong, and he's not afraid to stick his nose into things, and he's also a great competitor. And then we have some underclassmen that have really stepped up as leaders too. Landon Hilgart is a name that comes to mind. Garrett Bracewell is another guy. So just a lot of kids that, the rest of the team can look up to as an example of how do I carry myself as a player? How do I approach getting better and improving? And so, yeah, there's more guys I could name. Those are the top guys that come to mind.
So often the families have this line in these communities, and I know a lot of the names but you see a lot of them. And you mentioned like being a bulldog with Landon Snyder. I remember covering his mom's games when she went to Newman and won state championships on the basketball court. She was a leader. She was a bulldog. So, and I mean, it's amazing. And I know at communities like Marathon, it is truly a family tradition, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's not very many of them anymore, but there's still a kid on the team I went to high school with his sister. And so, yeah, it's very tight knit.
Let me ask you about the season up to this point. You had two really big wins, 33-0 against Pittsville to start it off, and then 40-0 at Colby last week. And then in the middle, you had a couple of games that were probably, for a coach, the ones that keep you up at night. Auburndale is always so good, and it's such a great rivalry in all these sports with Marathon, and a game that went right down to the wire, and you outgained them, but unable to get over the hump. And then against a loyal Greenwood squad that looks to be much improved this season with their performances. What did you take away from the wins where you were dominant? Because that has to be feeling good that, hey, when we are rolling, we can really take care of business against some programs that in the past have not been that easy. And then what do you take away from those kind of games, especially early in your coaching career, those games that you think, man, there's probably one play here or one play there that instead of being 2-3, you could be 4-1 and not have your hair fall out too early in your coaching career.
Right. Well, football is a game that comes down to it. The outcome can be decided with 2, 3, 4, 5 plays. And it's that close every single week. And so, in those 2 games against Auburndale and Loyal, and those two teams are good teams.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be in the playoffs, and they're going to be making a push in the playoffs. And so props to them. But we played with those teams. We played well enough to win those games, but we shot ourselves in the foot. And so it's a lesson that you got to play each play one play at a time. You can't get too ahead. You can't get too down on yourself, but there's going to be some adversity that you got to fight through, and keep pushing forward and keep gaining momentum and trying to steal that momentum back. In those 2 games, I thought our kids did a great job of sticking with it and not getting too down on yourself, understanding that, we're not out of this game. We still have more minutes to play and to keep fighting. And they were great lessons because, you can't beat yourself, and you gotta take care of, you got to do your job, and you got to control what you can control. So,
and those are kind of the wins within those losses, right? Those are the things that you learn that make you a better team moving forward. You learn from your mistakes, and also gives those athletes the opportunity to learn some life lessons too, right? Like what am I going to do after this tough play or after this tough loss? I also love each week when we talk to the coaches is drawing the parallels between what happens in high school football and what happens at the college level and at the NFL. I mean, I feel like the last couple of minutes when you were talking there, we could have been talking about the Green Bay Packers, right? Like their loss to the Browns last week. I mean, it was the same things happening to guys who make millions of dollars a year. The mistakes they made at tough times, it came down to probably 4 plays in that game, and it was the difference between winning and losing. So very, very, very interesting parallel there. My kind of follow-up with that one is too, like we've talked a little bit about marathon tradition and what a great community and strong it is. You've had a very successful sports career there as an athlete, and then went on to play college football up at Bemidji State. Who are your mentors? Like when you look right now and you're kind of blazing your trail and who you're going to be, but who do you model off? What good things do you pick from the coaches that you had over the course of your career?
Well, my football coach when I was in Marathon was Todd Stoffel, who's over in Mosinee right now. He was a great example as far as, he preached discipline, desire, character. All right. And I didn't steal that slogan from him. So if you're listening, Todd, it's still available if you want it. But it's that mentality where, and I've kind of adopted it for myself as chase greatness, be gritty, and give your maximum effort. And, so Todd has been a great influence, and I still see him around Marathon every once in a while. So it's always fun chatting with him. Adam Jacobson was my basketball coach, and he still is the basketball coach, and his brother Luke is on the coaching staff. And so, those guys are both, they were great coaches in my life. I was a junior when Adam took over as the basketball coach in Marathon, and he's done an absolutely great job. And before I came on here today, Luke said, you should talk to Adam because he's got all the coaching, the coach isms that you can steal from him. So yeah, Adam's been great. And then guys I've played with too, like I graduated with Colin Seibert, who went on to play college basketball. And, he was a close friend of mine, but a guy that I, couldn't let one up me in any sporting endeavor. So, we challenged each other and pushed each other. So yeah, I don't know if you classify him as a mentor, but a friendly competitor and a close friend.
Again, we're talking to Vince Dinkel, the head football coach at Marathon High School here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. You bring up Coach Jacobson, Adam Jacobson, when he took over, young guy. Mm-hmm. You're a young guy. I wish I was that young. But coming in now as a younger coach, do you find it an advantage maybe to be closer to the kids' age, or how do you look at that as you start here? Again, we see a lot of younger coaches nowadays. I think we see more and more of them. Do you feel is in terms of connecting with your student athletes, is it a positive?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't want to speak for any of the players. I don't know if that's the reason I've been able to connect with them, but it's all about respect and things like that. It's the times of being, a hard ASS and doing, running kids and yelling at them and all that type of stuff. It's you can't quite do that because you don't want any kid to check out and start to not feel like they are capable of accomplishing what you want them to accomplish. So it's, it's a delicate balance. You got to be, you don't want to be their friend, but you got to be friendly to them and make sure that they understand that you respect them. And as long as they're giving their effort and they're trying and they show up day after day and try to get better and try to improve, that, I think that's what it comes down to. And, I don't really see it as, because I feel quite a bit older than them.
Well, and one of the things we hear all the time, both in education now, but I think it's as true, if not more true, in coaching, especially in coaching, is, the kids don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? Like that's kind of the thing. So I think that's how it's changed a lot. Probably back when you played, for sure, back when I played back then. And we didn't get, if we didn't do things, we didn't get drinks at practice, and practice would stop and we'd run or up downs or whatever. And that's just not where we live anymore, both from an athlete standpoint and from a parent standpoint. So I think a big part of it is kind of learning that balance and building those relationships and understanding who you can push a little bit more and who you need to kind of hold hands or walk along. I think that's a big part of it. So as you look at your remaining schedule, and I know the football conference has probably changed a little bit since you played, so there are some different teams in there. You've coached for a couple of years now, but as you look at your remaining schedule starting this week with Weyauwega, what are your thoughts? How are things stacking up for you?
Well, where we sit right now, we got to approach each game the next 4 weeks as, this is our playoffs start this week. It's every single game from here on out means a lot for us. We got to take care of business. We got to do the little things right, and we got to, approach each day in practice and in the game like this is crunch time, and we gotta start taking care of business. The road is not easy. I don't want to offend anybody, but I think it's the toughest small school conference in the whole state. We've got a lot of heavy hitters, and we're trying to establish ourselves to be one of those teams that can make runs.
Establish. That's probably a big word when you come in as the new head coach. I haven't asked, do you have a philosophy offensively and defensively? So often coaches say, this is the way we want to do it. Are you somebody that is wedded to a certain way of running an offense or a defense, or do you look at your kids? What's your thoughts in terms of football philosophy on both sides of the football?
Yeah, my uncle, his name is Steve Dinkle. He was the offensive coordinator at University of Whitewater during their run of a lot of championships. And so that was one of the first things he said to me when I told him I was interested in applying for this job is, think of your philosophy, think of what you want as a program, how are you going to win football games is basically how he described it. And so that's been a huge help. I put a lot of thought into it. And so I'm the defensive guy. Aaron Kerner is my offensive coordinator. He's a former quarterback at Colby, and then played quarterback at UW Stout. And so I let him handle the offense and what we do as far as scheme goes. But, what we want to do is establish ourselves and positive yards on offense. We've got the athletes to hit a big play every once in a while. And so when the opportunity presents itself for a big play, we try and jump on it. And then defensively is just attack the ball carrier, attack the ball, try and get turnovers, be sound, be physical, and, do those little things right and be disciplined while you're doing them. Don't try to do anybody else's job. Try to do your job.
Yeah, I think when you've mentioned a couple times earlier in a previous question about stealing something from another coach or whatever, but I think that's a big part of it. I think
he said he didn't.
Well, he's lying. Because at the end of the day, and one of the things I love about the show is hopefully parents are listening and they can get a little insight into what it's like to be a head football coach. But there's not much out there that's new, right? When you talk X's and O's and offense and defense, like nobody's recreating the wheel. You're trying to do maybe what you've done in the past, but what somebody else has been doing for years, and you try to become really good at it. So the kind of the nuances of coaching are what you talked about, right? Kind of establishing that mindset. What is the attitude of our team? What is our approach from play to play, from series to series, from offense to defense? What do you guys, and part of that, you mentioned earlier, your senior leaders, what obviously in season practice time is spent on offense, defense, special teams, X's and O's, films, that sort of stuff. What have you guys done with your athletes to teach the other stuff? Like what the leadership stuff, the communication, how to be a good teammate? What are some of the ways you guys have stressed the importance of those skills?
Yeah, it's really just, when someone's not doing it the right way, call them out, hold them accountable. All right. And correct it when it happens. And then just vice versa, when somebody's doing it the right way, just give them kudos, give them shout outs, make sure the rest of the team knows, hey, that is how we want it done. Just trying to put an end to bad habits and reinforcing good habits.
How much fun is it to come back after a 40-0 win against Colby? That's a good program. That's always a good program. I imagine that was a significant win last week. Did that add something for the entire group going now into the final 4 weeks of the regular season?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have two coaches that used to be on one used to play for Colby, one used to be on the Colby staff. So that was an important one on our schedule.
Did the kids know that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep, they did. And like you said, Colby's got a great team, and they dealt with some injuries during our game. So, the score is what it is, but they run a great program over there, and they're a tough team and a lot of young guys. So they'll be back in the near future.
When we talk about each season and in doing the show, and Chad used the word before, kind of establish yourself as a program, and then when you apply that to the conference, where do you sit? So we spend a lot of time talking about in the CWC large and small, right? You kind of have traditionally Stratford sitting at the top where you guys, and then for years now, it's kind of been Amherst and Stratford, and then Wittenberg Burnhamwood's kind of been there. And then from there, we kind of talk about who's in the middle, who's at the bottom, and who's trying to get there. Like that's a big part of where you're at as a program, right? Like trying to figure out taking that next step. And what we've noticed this year is some teams who we felt have kind of been strongholds or maybe trending in the right direction are not. And I think you guys are kind of, I feel like in the opposite of that, like a lot of injuries last year, new program, new staff, kind of trending in the right direction. Is that something that you guys talk about, is where you want to be in the conference and who it is that you want to be able to compete with when it's all done?
Yeah. And like the messaging too is like the experts say whatever they want to say, and the kids, it's up to the kids how good we want to be. Everything really comes down to them. I remind them that coaches don't win games, players win games. So it's in their hands. So they don't, even though someone says we're supposed to be here, we have a chance to prove ourselves every single week. And, we try to do our best. We try to do our all of our little things correctly. And, we prepare throughout the week like we're going to win. We approach pregame like we're going to win, and then we play the game. And at the end of the day, the scoreboard tells us what happened.
And when you find yourself back in the playoffs and doing that, what I find interesting too about these conferences is so often these teams end up in the same 8-team playoff bracket kind of to start the year. So no matter what happens in that first matchup, I feel like every year we see some round twos of those second matchups. So I think that's a great kind of approach to know that whether you beat them or didn't beat them the first time, you got a pretty good chance of seeing them again and getting your payback or revenge or going 2-0.
Were you part of the marathon teams that won playoff games? I think it was like Northern Elite in Athens. Were you part of those teams back in the day when you were in school? Did you have playoff football?
Yes. My junior year, we beat Athens in the first round, and then we lost to Spring Valley.
Yeah.
And then my senior year, I think we beat Crandon in the first round and then lost to Amherst.
By the way, how good is Amherst this year? Because you saw them and they seem to be dominant to everybody this year. How How impressed were you when you went over there a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, they have some good players. They definitely have some quality athletes. You know, their running back, I mean, he had a game against us. He was tough to tackle. He's a big boy. And then, you know, watching film and stuff, well, I was really impressed with their quarterback and their receiver as well. And up front, they got some big boys, and even their not so big boys, they bring it. And so yeah, I think they have a pretty good shot to make a run this year.
And again, along the same lines, you having experienced playoff football, I imagine for especially the seniors and bouncing back from what was an injury plagued year, I imagine that, again, you talk about one game at a time, but it would be a big accomplishment to get back to the playoffs for Marathon, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like this year's senior class, right? They've had success in baseball. They've been to state champion in basketball. And they expect a lot out of themselves. And, you know, that's, you know, I tell them it's, you approach the game the same way as those other sports, and, you know, the sky's the limit. Our future and our team is in your guys' hands. It's really up to you guys.
What types of things do you guys do at Marathon, with the size of your enrollment and that sort of thing, with having so many kids who play 2 or 3 sports together, and a lot of the basketball, you talked about baseball, probably a lot of track. You might even have some kids who play baseball and track in the spring.
Got some wrestlers, I know.
Yeah, a bunch of wrestlers as well.
Yeah.
So what is it like, working with those other coaches, both whether they help out on your staff or just knowing that you guys are sharing athletes, and knowing once we get to a certain time in the fall, the basketball coaches pull the basketballs out of the closet, and kind of in the summertime, the kids who play Legion play a million Legion games and do summer basketball leagues. So how does that go? Like, what are the relationships with the other programs and the other head coaches?
Yeah, every single head coach in the Marathon program has given me a piece of advice or wish me luck or help me in some format. You know, even the girls head coaches too. They've all been a huge help, especially because I don't know what I don't know yet.
Yep.
And it's challenging in the summer because the kids got to balance so many things. And so, you know, you want to get your time in with your sport, but you don't want to burn the kids out. So it's tough to strike a balance when they're doing so much, but you know, every coach in Marathon knows we want what's best for our kids. We want them to develop as athletes. You know, you develop that multi-sport athlete, you know, even though they're not working on the specific sports skills, they're becoming better, and they will help whatever team, whatever sport in that way by getting experience in all these different things. They're becoming better overall athletes.
I always think it's great too, being coached by other people, right? Different coaching styles and different levels of energy and different communication styles. I think it just makes them better across the board.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to wrap it right there. We're coming up on the top of the hour, but Coach Vince Dinkel, Marathon Red Raiders, congrats on a great win last week. Best of luck against Wyowega this weekend. Good luck in the playoff push, and thanks for stopping on by.
Thank you.
That's Vince Dinkel, our coach guest for this week here on the program. We will have our student athlete guest coming up just after the news. Evan Pacell. He is from Athens High School. He's having a big year in 8-player football, so we'll talk to him coming up in just a few minutes. Again, one more hour to go. We'll look ahead to week number 6 as well in the next hour. With Jason Foster, I am Chad Holmes. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And Evan, are you there? Hang on a second here. Evan? Oh, let me add you in here. Me? And Evan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. Can I make sure on your pronunciation of your last name? I'll make sure I get that right.
Pasale.
Pasale. Okay.
Yep.
Congrats on the success so far this year.
Thank you.
We're going to be going on in about 45 seconds. So we'll be right back. And welcome back. It is hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. I am Chad Holmes, along with former Wausau West High School head football coach Jason Foster. And coming up a little bit later in the program, we'll wrap up the recaps with the 8 players of week number 5, and we'll have a complete look at all the action of both 11-player and 8-player in week number 6 here on the program. But first, it is time for our student athlete guest for this week from Athens High School, from the 8-player rank, off to a 4-1 start this season, Evan Pasale. And Evan, first of all, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And looking at your numbers so far this season, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the team, because last season was a bit of a up and down year for your team in terms of wins and losses. It was probably a pretty tough year, but this year off to a 4-1 start, and kind of jumped out to me. And one reason that we have you here this week is last week your team had a really terrific victory, winning at Hurley. And Hurley, always a very good football program, 30-0. What's been the key so far for your team and the success in the first 5 weeks?
Definitely just working hard and working as a team. We flow together, do our little jobs right, and coming on top.
So who are some of those teammates? Like talk about some of the guys who in addition to yourself, who've made an impact on the team this year and what their roles are.
Camden Zarnke, he's our quarterback. He's been doing a great job throwing the ball and getting handoffs to where they need to be. Also, the ball fakes have been amazing. Mm-hmm. Our wing, Daxton, he's done a great job of blocking if need be, or even running the ball. And our up front guys, Jordan, great snaps, makes a block. Cole Hartman has really stepped up this year, makes beautiful blocks, beautiful lead blocking, really sets a nice hole for me, Cam, or Dax. And then Jeffrey Draper on the other side, he's also doing a great job of blocking, sets a hole, gets his feet moving, drives the players downfield, just make a nice gap for any runner to run the ball. And then our 2 tight ends, we have Shaylin Blake and Brock Beatty, and they also do an amazing job of blocking. And then also they go for passes, and if the ball is thrown to them, they catch it if need be.
And looking at some of the stats for your team, you've been able to do work both through the air and on the ground your ground game has been by far, in terms of yardage, but you do have a pass game as well for yourself. 91 carries, 630 yards, nearly 7 yards per carry, 10 touchdowns already this year. But you've also caught the ball 10 times for 74 yards and a touchdown. For yourself, as you've looked at what you've been able to accomplish on the offensive side of the football, I imagine it's been a lot of fun. And has there been anything in particular for your personal success this season?
It's definitely been a lot of fun. And for my personal success, I'm happy to be with the team and another family to keep pushing me to be better. And we work hard as a team as a whole.
Yeah, as Chad mentioned, that Hurley's traditionally a really good 11-man team. They've been playing 8-man for a couple of years now. I know their coach really well, and I know he's an outstanding coach. So to pitch a shutout against Hurley is really impressive as well. Talk about your defense a little bit.
Our defense, amazing scheme. We really do our jobs. That's the biggest thing, is we do our jobs, and that's straightforward. Just doing our jobs. That's all I got for defense.
do you know, like, obviously, because you played week in and week out, what do you see more week in and week out? Teams that are more pass heavy, run heavy? Is it a lot of balance? And what style do you prefer to play against when you're on defense?
I'd say we see a lot more run teams. They do throw the ball a little bit, but I feel like a lot more running. And I think I like to see more run teams. Just I'm there to step up, and we got the line. Everyone just stepping up with our defense. So I definitely think I like running defense against running offenses.
Let me ask you about that, because in 8-player football, put your defensive hat on. I find that it's very much the advantage for the offense, the 8-on-8, that it makes it a lot more difficult for defensive coordinators and for defensive players if an 8-player team is a good offense and executes very well. But as you have showed last week with a shutout again against Hurley, and generally this season, you had the one game against a very good Flambeau squad, but other than that, 6 points allowed, 12 points allowed, 16 points allowed. In the 8-player game, could you give us maybe a little sense of what leads to success defensively in what's a very difficult, I think, situation for defenses in this 8-player football?
Yeah, an 8-man, if you kind of get on the outside and you're running the ball, it's going to be more than likely a touchdown. So our ends do a great job and our corners do a great job of bringing the ball back to the middle. And then we got the linemen and linebackers there to stop the play and can advance.
Let's step away from the football field for just a moment. I know that you're involved in other sports. What other sports are you involved in?
I do wrestling and baseball.
Do you have, I always like to ask with the wrestlers, do you use some of the same, I think technique is probably the wrong word, but is there some of the same maybe mentality that you have on the mats that you take to the gridiron?
Definitely. You want to go in there and win, take them down, be the aggressor, get your job done.
When I used to coach in the style of defense we played, I had some really good wrestlers who played kind of those strong safety or outside positions. And I used to love watching them tackle. I used to love their hand position on the tackle and watch cup those hands on the back of the hip when they're tackling, just almost the same way they do when they're doing takedowns. So I definitely hear what you're saying there. In kind of talking a little bit more off the football field in school, what is your favorite subject? What do you like to study? And what are you thinking about doing when you're done with high school?
In school right now, I'd say definitely my English class is my favorite. It's just fun with the teacher, and I'm learning while having fun, so it makes it enjoyable. And then future down the road, I'm thinking about going to criminal justice and be like state trooper.
All right, you got to give your English teacher a shout out here. Who is the guy you like, or guy or Mrs.? Who's your favorite teacher?
Miss Wilker, she's a great teacher.
Awesome.
When you aren't involved in all your sports, when you're not involved in your studies and maybe family time, what do you like to do for fun? What do you do to get away from it? If you need maybe a mental break or just want to have some fun, what do you like to do?
I definitely hang out with friends, do that a lot, like going on the boat or just hang out with them, do anything. I also like to hunt a little bit here and there. And then I play my PlayStation or even games on my phone just to make some free time for myself and friends.
Is that group you mentioned about the other sports you play? Is that group kind of the same in all three of those sports? That kind of, do you guys do a lot together, both in season and out of season and summertime kind of training too?
Yep. Like I said, boating, that's usually my football squad that I go out with. And then yeah, a lot lifting, my football squad, we go lift together, and out of season work, we work together to get better.
How deep have you gone in wrestling? Have you made deep runs? Have you been able to get to state at this point? How good are you on the mats?
I have not made it to state. I made it to sectionals my freshman year, and then I did not really show too well in regionals my sophomore and junior year, but looking forward to making the state this year. Going to work hard in wrestling.
What's
Well-
your weight class, by the way?
Right now I weigh 150, and I think I'm going to cut down to 138.
Jason?
The coach will be okay with that now that football's over, going back down to 130, or once football is over, 138. One of the things I like to talk about, especially when we get our eight-man student athletes on, is the conferences are a little different than they are probably for your other sports. And you see maybe some teams you don't always see. Who in football, who are your favorite rivalries? Like, what is that game on the schedule that you circle and look and say, these guys are the ones we're going to beat. These are the ones I know the best and really want to make sure we come out of there with a win.
Well, now obviously, since we lost to Flambeau, I want him back. I want to play him again. Otherwise, Shawamigan, we play them this week, and that's a game that we want to win. That's our homecoming game, so we definitely want to win and come out strong. Every game, I want to play every game, come out on top in every game.
Do you have a favorite rival in wrestling? Either personally or school-wise?
I don't think so. I just want to win. That's what I'm out there for.
Speaking of football, because now you're 4-1, this year the 8-player playoff has expanded to 32 teams, so there's more opportunity there. Is that something that your guys, in the back of the mind? Because as I know Coach Foster would say, you can't be looking that far ahead. But is that something that's sort of out there, the excitement of perhaps making a playoff push on the gridiron?
Definitely. From the beginning of practice, we've said we have opportunities to be great. And then on practice field, we work hard, and in games, we work hard. So we're going to keep going game by game, day by day, working hard at practice to look forward to playoffs. Just keep working hard to get there.
You talked a little bit there about team goals, and obviously a big part of setting those and what you do in the off season and preparing week to week is the coaching staff. Talk a little bit about your coaches and the different styles that they have, and not who your favorite is, but tell me about what it's like offensive, defensively, and your coaches from sport to sport at Athens.
The head coach for football is Mr. Detelm, Coach Detelm. And he does a great job running the. He's also the offense coordinator. He does a great job of running the offense. Has fun with us and makes us work hard. And we have Coach Steinke, who runs the defense. And the schemes every week are great. Set up perfectly to stop our opponents. We also have our special teams coach, Coach Thurs, does a great job with setting up how we're gonna return the ball or kick off the ball or just our setups. For our wrestling, we have our coach, Garkey. He's been a coach for a while. He was a state champ back in the day. He really pushes us really hard. He makes sure that we're in check mentally, make sure we're prepared day to day. And then our coach for baseball is Coach Detelm again. He just likes to have fun and push us to be great.
You get so many opportunities. Sometimes it's fun to talk to kids who go to the smaller schools, but you get so many opportunities to be in multiple sports, and in your case to play two ways in football. I imagine that it's a lot of fun to have those kind of opportunities at a place like Athens. Could you talk a little bit about Athens athletics and those opportunities that you do have?
Yeah, I love playing both sides of the ball. It really makes me work harder at practice because I know I'm going to be out there and I have to show for it. And then I love that I still have to work hard in any sport that I play, even though there's less people to play, but I still work myself to be the best on the field and challenge other people. And then I hope that other people keep coming out so more players push each other and push me.
You mentioned that this week's a big game against Chequamegon, and you also mentioned that it's homecoming. As a head coach, when you hear the word homecoming, you get a little nervous, you shudder a little bit because there's tons of distractions. But at the same time, it's one of the most fun parts of high school, right? Like it's one of those things that you remember forever. What are some of the extra activities that you'll do this week because it's a homecoming week? Obviously, I know you're working hard in practice and the game's really important, but what are some of the other homecoming things that you'll be partaking in this week?
Coach Deaton said the same thing. He really doesn't like homecoming because the distractions. But we have a powder puff game and buff stuff, and then dressing up every day. Just bring the school spirit up and have some fun.
You have this week against Chequamegon. You have a very tough game coming up next week against Phillips, who's only lost one game so far this year. And then Rib Lake, who I think put up like an 80 spot or something ridiculous last week. When you look at your team, there's been a lot of good to win 4 of the first 5 games. Where, though, do you think that your team needs to be better to take that next step, to be not only competitive in your final 3 regular season games, but to be able to make a run when the 8-player playoffs get underway?
I definitely say mentally, we have to get stronger. We just, in general, got to get stronger mentally to believe in ourselves so that we can do great. And then, obviously, the backs have to read the holes better. QB's got to read the ball better, know where to throw it, know when to take it. And then the lines got to block better, move their feet, get their butts to the hole, create a gap. Everyone can work on something. Defensively, we can attack the ball better, flow to the ball better, do our jobs better, know where we're supposed to be.
Along the same lines, could talk about the 4 wins that have been so impressive. What did you learn against Flambeau, a team that is one of the top ranked teams in the state right now, and another team that you could face down the road? What did you and your teammates learn in that game, that the only loss you've had so far this year?
Definitely learned that we can't give up and we got to keep playing. We got to come out strong and believe in ourselves. Make sure we hit hard, be physical right off the bat. And then even if one of the starters come out, get hurt, the player that comes in has to step up and replace them and try their hardest, do their best, and still believe in the players that are on the field.
You've did a great job in the last 2 questions, kind of talking about what you need to improve on in both. What do you need? What were the challenges against Flambeau? As a senior leader on this team with your 3+ years of experience now, what is your leadership style, and what do you feel your role is as a player as compared to a coach, in order to help kind of fill those holes and improve on those deficits and make sure you guys are as good as you can be moving forward? What is your leadership style?
I like to push the team and I like to have fun. If someone's down, I like to be there to pick them up. I like to be friends with everyone on the team. Definitely push them. If I'm down, I hope that they're going to pick me up. And if they're down, I'm going to go pick them up. And then if they make a great block at practice, I'm going to be right there to tell them that was all theirs. They did that. If there was a great handoff, that was my quarterback. That was Cam's. That was Cam's ball right there. If there was a good throw, I like to let the quarterback know and whoever's catching the ball know. I like to lead them in anything we do, like stretches or even sprints. And then I like to push them to be greater. Like in sprints, I want them to be better and believe that they can be better. Just overall believe in themselves and to push themselves.
Great answer.
I almost forgot one of the tough questions because, never want to say one is more fun than the others, but you're, multi-sport guy. Do you have a favorite sport? And of course the coaches will not be hearing this, so you can be completely honest about it.
It kind of depends on the season, but right now I think I'm definitely enjoying football. You have a good record and we're having fun on the field, so it's great being out there.
Jason, anything else you want to ask Evan before we ask our final question?
No more questions. Just congratulations on a great start to this season. I know we're just kind of at that halfway point, but you guys got some tough opponents coming up. So real good luck moving forward, and can't wait to follow you guys the rest of the year.
Thank you.
One final question, though. We always ask our student athlete guests, especially with, those that are seniors who are multi-sport athletes, because you've had experience for a number of years. If you have an opportunity to talk to a freshman that's just starting their journey, whether in the football program or wrestling or whatever it may be, based on what you've learned over these years. What piece of advice would you give a freshman just starting their journey?
I definitely tell them to get in the weight room. It's a big part of it. Build your confidence and obviously your strength, your bones, your body structure, and then just to believe in yourself. You know, you might not be the biggest guy out there right away, but you can work your way up to be a starter, and you can build your confidence to be a leader on the team and have good stats. I mean, that's obviously not the most important thing, but just having a good team and having fun, I'd tell him to push himself to be great.
Well, Evan Pasale, you do have some good stats. Leading rusher, leading pass catcher, leading tackler for a very good Athens Blue Jay squad that's 4-1 on the season. Thanks again for joining us tonight. Best of luck against Chequamegon. Best of luck throughout the rest of the season and rest of your senior year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Again, Evan Pasale joining us here on the program. We're going to take a timeout, come back, continue a review and preview the action of high school football. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. I'm Chad Holmes, join myself.
Are you passionate about local high school sports? So are we. WXCO
Evan, thank you very much.
98.9 FM is proud.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And again, good luck the rest of the way.
Coverage of
Thank you.
Sports, game after game, season after season. But we can't do it alone. We are currently seeking local sponsors and community partners who believe in the power of sports to bring people together, inspire youth, and energize our hometown pride. Promote your business, support our local athletes, be heard by thousands of loyal local listeners. If your business is interested in supporting live sports broadcasts while gaining valuable exposure, now is the perfect time to become a WXCO sports sponsor. Message us on our Facebook page or call or text our sales rep, Aaliyah, at 608-573-1597. That's 608-573-1597. Let's keep Wausau High School sports on the air together.
And we are back. Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, WXCO.FM, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, and at YouTube.com and the 98.9 WXCO channel. I miss Ian. I like when he pushes the buttons. I'm pushing all the wrong buttons going into that commercial, but he'll be back next week. He is doing a final rehearsal for the show choir that's at the Grand Theater this weekend. So folks can go see Ian and the rest of his group as the center stage band and show choir at the Grand Theater Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. So I said, okay, you can go to your final dress. I will handle it myself tonight, but he will be back next week.
That's fantastic. And good luck to Ian this weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks to our guest, Evan Pasale from Athens and Vince Dinkel from Marathon. And it's interesting because I did ask Coach Dinkel back because I knew that they were in the playoffs. I remember doing the games, actually, the Athens game. And it shows how things changed because back then, Athens and Marathon were in the same division. And now Marathon is still doing what they do. Athens is doing what they do in the 8-player game. Things don't stay the same in high school sports in Wisconsin, do they? Especially in this era where there's such an ebb and a flow for enrollments, and these programs just change all the time.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. When I first got to Northland Pines back in the early 2000s, we were in the Lumberjack Conference. So Park Falls, Phillips, Tomahawk, we played all of those. That was our conference, Lakeland, and to kind of see. I mean, Park Falls was Park Falls. Now they're Chequamegon. Yeah, so a lot of change and ebbs and flows as it goes. I think you're absolutely right.
What did you think of Coach Vince Dinkel? It's always interesting, a first-year head coach, and again, a younger guy. I mean, he hasn't been out of it that long. And you said he went to play college football. I remember when he was a player, he was just he was tough to deal with for other teams as a receiver. He's a big, strong kid back then. Starting his new career, you've gone through it with multiple schools. I thought he's brought a real, I think, positive energy to Marathon this year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it, right? And when we've looked in the Valley and talked about the hires that have happened there. There's been quite a bit of turnover in the last few years, and there's a lot of different ways of doing it, right? Like you bring in at a big school like Spash, you bring in somebody from a small program, and you wonder how they're going to do. But I definitely love the idea of a community like Marathon bringing in an alumni, and not just out of nowhere, right? He's been there, and I think one thing I've learned about the Marathons, Edgar Stratfords of the world, is that community pride. So I think that plays a big role in that hire. This is one of the first times I've had the opportunity to talk to Coach Jinkla, and I think he's awesome. I think that I love his energy. I love his attitude. I think when you think about putting on my athletic director hat for a minute there, when you look to hire somebody, you kind of have this row of boxes over here you want to check and things you want to hear from somebody who's going to be running your programs, and most importantly, working with your student athletes, right? And in making sure that you're having a positive impact on them. Obviously, we want to win. That's our goal. But to make sure you're developing young men and emphasizing the important things. And he kind of checked all those boxes as he went through and talked tonight. I think Marathon is in good hands, and it sounds like he's got a really good young staff around him too. From my understanding, there's some more experienced guys on that staff too, who've had some different roles. But I love it what he said about their offensive coordinator and a young guy from. So I think Marathon's in good hands and definitely heading in the right direction.
And I like the question you asked about the mentors, and he has some really good people that he's talked to. I think that goes a long way, that the guys that have been through this, who have good experience, who he has a relationship with, a real good list there of successful coaches.
Right. And people who know what it's like to coach in that community with those parents and families, and can maybe help him maybe avoid some of those landmines that might exist out there. So yeah, he's in a good spot. I think Marathon football and their student athletes are in a good spot, and lucky to have him.
Let's talk about the 8 player from last week. CW8, Marion Tigerton, still undefeated in conference, 4-0, 4-1 overall. Knocked off Newman Catholic 48-38. Cardinals now 3-2, 2-2 in the conference. Braylon Milkey, 26 rushes, 340 yards, 5 touchdowns for Marion Tigerton. Griffin Pent had 7 catches, 107 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the Cards. Michael Fox came on for an injured Quincy Fender at quarterback. 7 of 9, 95 yards, 12 rushes, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Everett Pent, 11 tackles. I think people that don't know what's going on will say, oh, that's an upset. It's not an upset. Marion Tigerton has 39 players on their team. Newman Catholic lost. They came into the game missing their starting middle linebacker and center, and they lost 3 more two-way starters in the game, including their quarterback, Quincy Fender, including a top receiver in Cooper Gould, including their second-string center. They were playing with their third-string center and then even their fourth-string center for a few plays. And I know Coach Mickley was very proud of his team because, and I was listening to it because they had a delay, and we had the game on after our game from Wausau West last week, and they were still just starting the second half. And I'm listening to that game, and they're just they're dropping like flies again for the Cards. And it was like Rocky. They kept he get knocked down, but they kept getting up, and they kept that game close against a really good team. And I just wanted to say that. I mean, it was really impressive. Those young men, a team that starts with about 20 to begin with, and they go to your third and fourth string centers, which is a very difficult position for a spread offense, and they were able to do it. And I just thought it was one of the good things about high school athletics. Those guys really stepped up and battled hard. And that Braylon Milkey is a beast in 8-player football. He's had some huge games for that Marion Tigerton team. That is another example that we've talked about of programs that were not at the top of conferences, both in 11-player and 8-player, that's moved up to the top of the conference. I mean, it's really been an interesting season. That's another program that's really taken a big step forward.
Yeah, first off, when I was home watching the news last Friday night and trying to dry out a little bit and saw the Newman game was still going on, I wondered if maybe you left Tom Field and headed over there to catch this, maybe even announce the second half of that one. But it's kind of like we mentioned to Coach Dinkel too, in a game like that, what you were referencing with Coach Micklig. Obviously it was still a close game, and in the potential was there to still win it with all of those things. But if you don't win that game, I'm sure Coach Micklig found an incredible list of things to be proud of and build on and talk about with those kids, right? It's the game within the game. It's the little wins inside of a loss, but ultimately it's about building character and finding out who you are as an individual and who you are as a group together. And it sounds like once again, Newman had to face a challenge head on, and came out really well. Obviously you want to win that game. You want to win every game. You want to be ready for the playoffs and all those things, but yeah, dealing with injuries is hard. I mean, you know me, I love to draw the parallels too, right? So, I mean, God, I can hardly watch Badger football right now and look at what they do with their backup center, right? I mean, that guy's on a full scholarship, maybe making a couple $100,000 a year, and he can't get the ball back to the center. So when you talk about a high school, when they have a total of how many guys to start
20
with?
when everything
20 to
was
start
going,
with, and you get down to the fourth center. I don't even know who that might be at that point. And part of me wonders if he had to change his number to make sure he wasn't an eligible receiver snapping the ball.
Stat of the game, though, was you don't see this very often. The first 9 drives of that game were all touchdowns. Both teams were just pounding the, and that's one reason I asked Evan Pasale that, you know, in the 8-player, there is a kind of an advantage. I don't envy any defensive coordinators in 8-player football because it's just more difficult than an 11-player, and those two offenses showed it last Friday night. So,
other interesting side note, real quick on that. I know we're kind of getting up against it in a second.
Doing
here.
fine. We're doing fine.
Is number one kind of the, and I'll guilty as charged with what I'm about to say. I think there's this misconception out there that 8-man football is like 7-on-7 summer passing league. I think people believe it's just this. There's only 8 guys. You line up, you throw a guy back there to snap it. A couple of guys maybe try to keep him off the quarterback, and it's just chuck. So I thought it was really interesting to, as we read through the stats week to week, have Coach Micklig and some of the Newman student athletes on, but even what Evan said, that you see more running the ball, and you look at these rushing attempts and totals of the game. And then the other thing that really struck me was the strategy, right? Yeah. He said they're trying offensively to bounce the ball to the outside, because once you get outside, it's almost always a touchdown, which is probably a little bit of a stretch.
That's the way it used to be,
right?
To be honest with you,
right?
That's
and then, I mean, obviously in all levels of football, those outside players' job is to force it back inside.
Right.
But generally in high school football and other ones, your job is to bounce the ball to the outside. You do not want them to be able to run between the tackles, right? So just an interesting strategy piece in running the ball. They're trying to force that ball back to the inside, whereas in 11-man football, you're really trying to get that football to the edge and making them run east and west instead of north and south for as long as possible.
And there are a number,
interesting parallels.
And there's a number of a variety of offenses in 8-player that one wouldn't think. And I think in some ways it's more variety than sometimes in 11-player football. And also there's been such a influx of championship level coaches in the last 5 years or so. We've seen a lot of the programs. Mentioned Hurley.
Yeah,
I mean, now they're
Scott
8
Erickson,
and they had been an 11-player. I mean, I think it was a couple of years ago that they beat Edgar in the playoffs, right? I think. I mean, now they're 8-player, and they have a coach like Scott Erickson. You have Terry Lobby, the state championship coach from last season from Owen Whitty. I mean, you have a lot of these that have won big in 11-player, but their schools and the enrollment have gone down, and they're still coaching. And that's been one of the big changes from when Newman first came into 8-player, because I think when Paul Micklig went in there, he was able to take advantage of the work that he and his coaches do and make a lot of these other people say, hey, we're going to have to be better. And I think a lot of the whole level of 8-player has gone up significantly in the last number of years.
I think kind of make the analogy, right? I mean, for a long time, Coach Micklig was playing chess when some of the other coaches were playing checkers. And I think you're right. I think the strategy plays a huge role. And kind of like we mentioned with Coach Dinkel too, people are now stealing, right? People are now seeing what these really good programs are doing that's working. And they have their own 8-man coaching clinics now too. So you go and you learn these things from these other coaches and talk about building it. I think the big thing that's important for people to know is kind of like we talked about with Evan, is what wins high school football games is the other stuff. It's not necessarily the X's and O's, right? It's your attitude, it's your approach, it's your work ethic, it's your mental toughness, all those, like, that's what matters. And when you line up on Friday night, who's got more of that?
Yeah.
What the difference that the coaches make is a lot of times those X's and O's and how you approach it. And it sounds like that's getting better across the board in 8-man football.
I would say that is very true. And another team that, again, was not one of the tri-champions of this conference last year was Tri-County. They're 5-0 this season. They beat Elman Bancroft last week. Elman had beat Newman a few weeks back. Elman's now lost to both Tri-County and Marion Tigerton. Is Tri-County 4-0 in the conference, 5-0 overall, beating Elman 22-14. So, again, this conference has been very interesting. The tri-champs from last year, none of the three are at the top. It's two other schools, Tri-County and Marion Tigerton, who are leading the way. Port Edwards has struggled this season. They lost to Wanakee 49-12. Also wanted to mention a few other scores from 8-player. Gilman and McDonald, the 1 and 2 teams ranked in the top of the 8-player rankings into last week. Gilman looks like a real force right now. They are still undefeated. They beat McDonald 38-12. It was 12-8 McDonald after one, but then Gilman shut them down for 3 quarters in a row, and that's not an easy thing, to say the least. Defending state champ Owen Withy is 3-2 after beating Thorpe 48-12. And Athens last week, as we learned, beat Hurley 30-0. Athens 4-1, Hurley 3-2. Evan Pasale, 18 rushes, 143 yards and 2 touchdowns. Camden Zarnke, 7 of 11, 64 yards and a score. Also added 78 yards rushing and a touchdown. Brock Beatty had 3 catches for 38 yards and a touchdown. And Phillips beat Rochelle 48-34. They're both 4-1, but neither of those schools will be involved in the playoffs because Phillips is too big, and Rochelle, they moved into an 8-player this year in the middle of the cycle. Tisk.
a year ahead of schedule. Yeah.
So they don't get to be all there. And as I said earlier, Brib Lake, who had missed the first game of the year because they were in the midst of a coaching change. Well, looks like they're starting to play better. They beat Winter Birchwood 80-14. And then Flambeau beat Shawamigan. Again, Shawamigan is really one of those head scratchers because it's a school that has had success, but they've just struggled. And now in 8-player they're struggling. And Flambeau beat Shawamigan, Butternut, Mercer 72-0. So
big numbers.
And we've seen a few of those big numbers during the course of this year. And that's something we don't like to see because that leads to teams deciding, hey, we're going to shut her down for the season, and nobody wants to see that. Definitely
was the first thing I thought of when I saw the Newman schedule from earlier in the week.
Yes. So let's just jump right into it. We don't need to take a break. We're going to go right into next week's action and start talking about that because the time goes by so very quickly. Wisconsin Valley Conference this week. DC Everest at Eau Claire North. Evergreen 3-2. 3-0 in the conference. Huskies 2-3, 1-1 in the conference. Everest has won 3 games in a row. North has won 2 games in a row. But Everest comes in, I think, the favorites, but they have to go to the new place over at Eau Claire North, a team that's probably feeling pretty darn good about themselves. So Everest will have to produce.
Yep, I think this one is when you talk about why Everest is likely favored in this one comes down to line play and the ability to run the football. And I think that Everest has proven over the last few weeks that is definitely the strength of their team right now. So I think that definitely is an advantage for them going in.
Marshfield at Wisconsin Rapids, and Marshfield 1-4, 1-1. Rapids 0-5, 0-3. The Wood County matchup for Marshfield must win. I mean, for them to, because last season they were similar and they found a way to the playoffs. They're kind of in the same boat where playing a lot of tough competition early, but Rapids did show, again, I thought a much better team, a team that can be very competitive against West last week. But for Marshfield, this has to be the start of a push.
Yeah, I think part of Rapids' confidence comes in not only from the outcome of that game, but how their defense played, how they stopped the run and what they were able to do on that side of the ball. And I think that probably gives them confidence against Marshfield. We talked about Marshfield has been running the ball well. So definitely a key part of that. Marshfield's running the ball well, but they still have not scored a ton of points week in and week out. So I'll be interested both to see the outcome of this game, but more so kind of the yards and the final score of it to see if Marshfield's kind of, because that leads to not getting ahead of ourselves. We can get ahead of ourselves. Coaches never want to, but that leads to when you talk playoffs, that leads to a very big game the following week between Wausau West and Marshfield.
Exactly. Eau Claire Memorial looking for that first win. They have the crossover every week. There's one crossover game, weeks 3 through 9. They're at Menominee from the Big Rivers, who are 3-2, 1-2 in the Big Rivers. And then Stevens Point at Wausau West Saturday afternoon, 1:00. Should be 75 degrees and sunny skies at Tom Field. This unusual. I can't remember the last time Wausau West played a Saturday afternoon game. It's been a while.
It hasn't been in the last 14 years. That's how long I've been there, and we haven't had one. Kind of getting the old Tom Field Friday, Saturday doubleheader with the Lumberjacks on Friday and then the Warriors on Saturday. So should be, and supposed to, like you said, supposed to be a beautiful day. Not going to feel like fall yet. So should be a good one.
Stevens Point 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the conference. Wausau West 3-2 overall, 2-1 in the conference. What do you think about this matchup? You had a game last week where I think it jumped out for me when it came to Spash was they were not able to establish a run game against Hudson. Wausau West has not really done a great job against the run the last couple of weeks. I think that Stevens Point will probably want to try to establish that run. They do have the big play receiver for Wausau West. They've been on the field defensively too much the last 2 weeks. I mean, even against Rapids, they did not have the ball very much in the second half of that game. They have to start establishing, I think, a little bit more in terms of ball control.
Yeah, I think on both sides of the ball for West, I think this is a huge challenge. I think we know Spash is a good football team. Last week was the first time they were really challenged, and Hudson got the best of them.
They did shut out Hudson in the second half. I'll say that much.
Yeah,
24 points came in the first half.
Yeah, but I think it's a pretty simple game plan. I think what's Spash's coach's name again? Put you on the spot there too. But anyway, kind of what he's done offensively has been a challenge for Wausau West over the last few years. So I think he comes in probably with what he believes a good game plan. And I think the big thing for Wausau West is last week in that game, in particular in the second half against Rapids, was there was a lot of bend and not break. But like you said, it kept their defense on the field a long time. So I think in order for West to be successful on Saturday, they're going to have to possess the ball. Like
Ryan Eichenberg.
Thank you very much. Yeah, they're going to have to possess the ball on offense, which means they're going to have to run it a little bit. Obviously, I think they've been really efficient passing the ball, but we also know that usually is combined with the ability to run the ball and mix things up, move Joe out of the pockets and play action stuff. So I think that Spash is probably definitely looking at this as a get right game after their first tough loss or challenge last week. And I think Wausau West, like we've talked about from week to week, is still looking to kind of establish that personality and who they could be moving forward. So we'll see if this is the week.
And I was actually thinking today about Ryan Eigenberger and Matt Johnson, this game, maybe the winner, asking them next week.
Hey.
Earlier, I was, I'm always thinking,
Yep.
But I haven't gone deep enough yet to say for sure yet.
All right, coaches, I'm sure they're both listening right now, so they're on notice.
But maybe I think it might be a good idea. So, but again, there's other choices that we still have to get, obviously.
Absolutely.
But Great Northern Conference, Mosinee at Tomahawk. I mean, talk about this is one of the highlight games of this week in Central Wisconsin football. You got Mosinee 3-2, 2-1, Tomahawk 5-0, 3-0. Game being played in Tomahawk. For Mosinee, must win if they want to get the conference championship. For Tomahawk, boy, if they win this one, it's going to be tough to slow them down.
Yeah, I think when we talk GNC football, I don't think I will ever feel comfortable considering Mosinee to be a true underdog in a game.
I know.
Based on who they've been the last many years, as well as knowing what Shreve Stoffel is capable of. I do have to say, Tomahawks has their resume at this point is impressive enough. And it's not just the wins or the outcomes. If you go back each week and look at the stats, it's balanced. It's more than one guy. It's guys on both sides of the ball having big games, but it's not just one guy doing it. I mean, their quarterback's consistent. Their running backs from week to week are changing it up and rushing for 100 yards, whether it's Riley or the other one, got the Riley on defense. So I think they've established, being at home. And now that I've said all of this, I think Mosinee's probably feeling pretty good about their win, because usually I jinx things or mess it up. But I just can't help but feel that Tomahawk's resume right now looks in such a way that I think you almost have to believe that they would be favored in this game.
And their defense has been the biggest thing that jumped out to me. Give up just 10 against Wausau East. Give up no points against Rhinelander on the road last week. I mean, those are impressive numbers against a couple of the bigger schools in that conference.
Right. And they're playing tough. They're well coached, and they recognize how big these wins in these games are, and nothing seems to have slowed them down or phased them yet.
Friday night, I will be at Tom Field as Wausau East will take on Medford. 6:35 airtime right here on 98.9 WXCO. Medford 2-3, but 2-1 in the conference is that's where they want to be at this point. That's more important. That's the big number at this point as we get closer to the playoffs. Wausau East 1-4, 0-3. Lumberjacks were banged up front. I went over to practice today, and it looks like they're going to be a little more healthy this week. They are making a quarterback change. Wausau East is going with their sophomore, and it's a big spot. It's a big spot against a good program. Medford has a lot of talented sophomores, and they're starting to grow into it. But for the rest of the conference, you got to take advantage of them when they're sophomores, because it's scary stuff hearing that. I mean, I heard, again, last spring from folks over in Medford that this may be a year of growing, because a very young team, but a talented group as well. So I think this is going to be a very interesting game on Friday.
I do. I think the one common thread that we've talked about in each week with Wausau East, when they've been successful, they've had big plays. And when they've struggled, it seems to be a result of the line of scrimmage. So I think this is a big line of scrimmage game. I know Medford's young, but I also know that that's probably the strength of their team or one of the strengths of their team as they look to kind of, if they're young, those guys getting more and more experience each week. I think playing at home is definitely an advantage for the Lumberjacks. So this will be a good test. I mean, the way that this conference has been, one big win, like if East finds a way to pull this one out, one big win against a team like Medford makes the final 3 weeks look a lot different.
Merrill and Lakeland. And you talked earlier about all these 2-1 teams in the conference, 4 of them, and these are 2 more of them. Merrill 3-2, 2-1. Lakeland 4-1, 2-1. Lakeland lost a 2-point toughie last week on the road at Medford. Merrill made easy work of Anago. They've won 2 games in a row. Again, this is one of those significant games. If you're 3-1, you feel so much better. It makes life so much easier coming down the stretch. If you're 2-2, then all these games, the coaches start to gray up very quickly.
Yep. And I think if you'd have told us at the beginning of the season that the week 6 matchup between Merrill and Lakeland was going to be so impactful or meaningful, we'd have probably chuckled a little bit. Yeah. But I think this is a great game. We talk about at the end of the show, what game are you really looking forward to this week? I think this might be it for me. This is probably the one that I look at and say, this is going to obviously clear up that playoff picture a little bit in the race for the championship in the GNC. And Lakeland lost a tough one last week, and Merrill kind of lost that tough one against Mosinee a few weeks before, right? And then turned around and beat Medford. So I think this is a great football game. Merrill's hot. Lakeland's coming off a tough loss where they each scored 3 touchdowns, and special teams got them a little bit. So this should be a great game.
Antigo at Rhinelander. Red Robins have struggled. Rhinelander had the good win against East, have been a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde crew this season. They played well against Tomahawk. They had a lead into the 4th quarter, but then lost that one. But Rhinelander a chance if they take care of business at home to get back to 500 and put themselves squarely in a good spot to earn a playoff berth.
Yeah, obviously Anago is struggling this year, kind of looking for that win. Being at Rhinelander is probably a tough one for them as well. So definitely a get-right game for the Hodags as they go down the stretch.
CWC Large, and start with the Marathon game. We talked again to Coach Vince Stinkle. They're 2-3, 1-2 in the conference. Wyowega Fremont, usually a very tough opponent. 1-4, 0-3, battling some injuries. But for Marathon, a chance to get back-to-back wins and put themselves in that position again with tough games. They got Stratford coming up next week. They got Winterberg-Burnhamwood after that. For Marathon, at home against a struggling Iola, must win.
Oh, I definitely think so. I think must win from a playoff standpoint, but also must win, not from a program standpoint, but I think this is a huge game for them, right? They had the big game against what we know is a tough program in Colby last week, even though they're struggling. I think Iola is a very similar situation, right? Proud program, successful program, fighting some injuries right now. So this is when you talk about where your program's at and where you want to be. This is one of those games that you look at and say, we should win this game. So you got to go out and get it.
Another very interesting CWC large game is Loyal Greenwood at Wittenberg-Burnhamwood. Normally, last year, Loyal Greenwood was in the cellar in the conference. They were not a good football team last year. This year, they are a good football team. They've been outstanding. 4-1, 2-1, and then Wittenberg-Burnhamwood. Boy, I don't know if there was a hangover from the overtime loss to Stratford 2 weeks ago, but for them to lose by 3 scores at Spencer Columbus, a bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what exactly, you know what I mean? Who knows, injuries or what the case might be. But I'm certainly knowing who they are traditionally, knowing the names that are still on that roster, knowing that they're well coached. I would certainly not get willing to write Wittenberg-Burnhamwood off on this one, but Loyal Greenwood comes out of this game with a win at Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, and I think we start having to talk about what their postseason might look like.
But Whitburn must win.
Yeah,
at home,
absolutely.
Got to win that football game. Amherst undefeated back home against Spencer Columbus. Spencer Columbus, again, we mentioned they were tied at half at Stratford earlier in the season. They beat Wittenberg-Burnhamwood last week. Much improved squad as well. Again, it's been a year where, like you said earlier, some of these schools are just rising up from the bottom of their conferences.
And the other thing I think it does, like I obviously I think Amherst probably rolls in this one like they pretty much have been each week, but I do think it's good for the conference that Loyal Greenwood made that a game last week.
Yeah.
I think
keeps you sharp, right?
Right, exactly. It's no longer we roll into Spencer Columbus, roll the balls out in the middle of the field, right, and go get back on the bus and go home at halftime. Exactly. I mean, I think it's good for the conference. I think it's good for Amherst to have to take this game a little bit more seriously. I think it makes them better down the road, and I think it gives Spencer Columbus another opportunity to take a big leap as a program.
Only winless team in conference is Colby, and they have a tough one at Stratford. Stratford, again, I mean, kind of jumped out, scoring 40-plus points last week. You add a little offense to what they bring defensively. That makes, again, a team to keep an eye on.
Yep, and more, unless Colby got really healthy and does something crazy, I mean, Stratford will be 4-0 in conference after this week, and things we talked about earlier in the season kind of start to turn around for them, and they can kind of build up as they head into those couple big games at the end.
Merriwood CWC, Assumption, 2-1 in the conference. So, I mean, they're right there. Getting that third conference win will not be easy. They go into Edgar this Friday night, but Assumption in their final year in 11-player football to get those couple of conference wins, and I'm sure they would like to leave 11-player with a playoff berth, and they put themselves at least in a position, but finding those extra wins is not going to be easy.
I say this is probably not their week, but we've talked about this earlier as well. This is their last year of 11-man football. These seniors that talk about it. So, I mean, they're not going to probably be able to talk about beating Edgar, but they can sure talk about how they competed against Edgar and maybe had one of the best outcomes they've had in a while. But Edgar definitely rolling, and it's going to be a tough defensive battle or tough offense, tough on Assumption's offense, I would imagine.
This is a week where it feels like the top three are facing maybe the bottom three in this conference. You got Pittsville, who has not won on the field. They won a forfeit game because Rosholt left the league. They're at Abbotsford, and Abbotsford's, they started off with that loss. It looked bad back in week one when they lost to Loyal Greenwood. Yep. Thought, how did they lose to Loyal Greenwood at home? Well, then Loyal Greenwood has said, hey, we're pretty darn good. But this Abbotsford team, and again, we talk often about their run game, but again, the number that jumped out last week was the way they stopped the run. And that says a lot right there.
Stop the run. And then I think with the other thing I've noticed, it seems a little different. I wish I had Coach Nat Miller back here to ask him the question too, but it looks like not only do they continue to run the ball really well, which means they have a really solid line, but it looks like they're getting a lot more rushing yards out of their quarterback as well, which I think means their offense is probably a little more dynamic than it's been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So tough matchup for Pittsville this week.
Armadale at Pacelli. Armadale 4-1, 2-1. They have not been, I think, quite as dominant as they were last year. They had that game against Marathon. They won on the last second block field goal. And generally, they have not been, I think, at the same level, but they're winning football games. And then Pacelli, home this week, got that win against Iola on the road last week. And again, if they want to find a pathway, and that's for some of these teams, a pathway to the playoffs, this may be a game that they can target.
Yeah, and I kind of take this one back up to the Spencer Columbus Amherst game, right? I think Pacelli is showing signs of life and making this potentially, I mean, probably not a win, but potentially more of a competitive game than maybe it's been in years past. So it should be interesting to see what kind of fight they put up.
8-player, Newman will not play this week. They get the forfeit against Menominee Nation, but in a sense, maybe not a bad thing for Newman after getting banged up pretty bad themselves last week. Tri-County is at Rosholt, and again, Tri-County undefeated. Rosholt 4-1. A pretty good non-conference game because Tri-County, Boulder Gresham forfeiting their season. That between Menominee Indian and Boulder Gresham, that means two of the teams in that conference are forfeiting all their games. Yeah. That's not a good thing.
That is tough.
Alman Bancroft at Wild Rose in a significant game for those squads as they try to work their way into the postseason. We mentioned earlier when we talked to our student athlete guest, Athens, home against Chequamegon Butternut Mercer in homecoming. Phillips at Flambeau, 4-1 against 5-0. Very significant game down in that part of the state up north. And Hurley is at Washburn as well. But we got about a minute and a half left. Again, we're week 6. I mean, in fact, with the 8-player, there's only 3 games left going into this week. I mean, their playoffs started a week earlier. And for the 11-player, I mean, we're coming down the stretch.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting week. I wish it were cooler. I wish it felt more like fall.
Yeah.
But I look at it and I think like there's definitely some wins or games that are expected that it probably there isn't a lot of intrigue involved in. But as we get through these games and you get to those final 3 games, those big matchups that haven't happened yet start to come into focus and kind of make each week moving forward kind of that much more exciting. Once again, very similar to last week, I'm very interested to see how the GNC matchups go.
And we're going to have to dig a little bit. I think maybe take a little time here within the next week or two to look at this new playoff because it is different. And I think it would be a good idea to talk a little bit about it. It would be a good idea for me to figure out what it's all about too. So that's going to be a project for myself here in the next week. So I think that'll be something we'll talk about as well because it is different this year. It's
for sure.
Significantly different. So, well, we're going to have a fun week again and we'll get another coach next week and another student athlete, but thanks to Vince Dinkel and Evan Paseo for joining us. And any final words here before we wrap it up?
No, I thought both our athlete and our coach were fantastic this week. So great job picking them this week, Chad, and looking forward to Friday and Saturday this weekend and getting back here next week to talk about it.
And we will do that next Wednesday, Big High School Sports Show, WXCO.